All right, we are live with an instant reaction podcast. As you can see, I lost my voice at the Patriots game. Their home opener, the Patriots also lose, falling to the Ravens 37-26. We'll get into the injury stuff, afterwards, of course. But I think as bad as the score looked, and as bad as some of the plays were, I don't think that's all negative. I don't think I think there were a lot of positives to take away from this game. As bad as the final score looks, I really didn't hate the way the Patriots played today.
No, and I think that's what makes the game so frustrating. This, in some ways, felt a lot like kind of the game against the Cowboys last year, where
Yeah.
you're playing a big team at home and you're the underdog, but if you play well, you're going to have a chance. And you made the plays you had to make the game close, and you
Right.
just couldn't take it to that next level. Max
Yeah.
decision making is something that's going to be called into focus after this. Which, the other point of this, the reason that we're talking about Mac's decision making as a low point is because of how good it was for most of the game.
Right.
Mac Jones kept the Patriots in this game for 3/4 of it. He played with Lamar Jackson. I mean, this was a duel between the two of them. And Mac was making plays in the running game. We saw him make that fantastic play scrambling on fourth and
awesome.
1. And the 2-point conversion that unfortunately didn't count. Then he was down for as close as it was. But some truly, truly fantastic plays. That's why this was close. And then you just have a couple plays that don't go the right way. I think Isaiah Wynn really, really hurt them early in this one.
Yeah.
At one point, 7 of 9 Patriots drives got into Baltimore territory, but 2 of those happened in the first half where you didn't get points out of it because you had issues once you crossed midfield. Another one, you're only getting a field goal instead of possibly a touchdown because I think that was a false start from Wynn.
Yep.
I think he had a false start and a holding, if I'm remembering that correctly, and it's tough. They're playing well enough to be in situations to win and then not making the winning plays then, which is what we saw week 1 and the opposite of what we saw last week.
Right. And it's
and
the
I also
same thing from last week,
Yeah. And I think at the same time, you got to give a lot of credit to Lamar Jackson. I thought he was freaking terrific all game long. Thought he made a lot of plays. They got into the red zone and he made the right play every time.
Yeah.
Which Pat's made it difficult on him. There were 2 touchdowns in there where he's putting the ball right where it needs to be. I think you'd want Devin McCourty to break up that touchdown pass to Andrews if you can. But that one to Duvernay in the corner was just a perfectly placed football. And we talked about it on, I think it was at the Thursday show, about how you're going to make the depth options beat you. And if they beat you, you tip your cap. And that's what that Duvernay touchdown felt like. Although, Baltimore special teams setting up short field with that punt return.
Yep. And that's, if only the Patriots had an electric punt returner on their roster. I mean, if only they did,
I'll tell you this much. Marcus Jones returned some kicks today, and I did not think he looked great doing that. If he's looked returning punts the way he looked returning kicks, I don't think he had great vision. So that might explain some of the difference, because for as many muffs as Miles Bryant has had, he's also made a couple of really nice plays.
Has he though? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I'm with you. I want to see more Marcus Jones.
You got to have a guy back there that can catch the ball first and foremost. And, Miles Bryant now is muffed
didn't have
twice.
This long of a leash.
Right. I just don't get it. Right. And so he gets beat by Duvernay on the touchdown. And as you said, it was a really nice throw. I thought he could have done a better job in coverage initially. Right. He gets there and he fights for the ball at the point of contact. And of course, Duvernay comes down with it instead of him. But I thought the coverage could have been a little bit better than it was. But overall, Miles Bryant was fine. I thought, Deatrich Wise had a fantastic game.
So good.
Obviously gets 3 sacks. But then he was out a lot in the second half. I was very confused by some of the rotations they had. It seemed strange. I didn't see Wise as much on the field in the second half as they did in the first half, which I was a little surprised about. And again, I haven't looked at the snap count, but that's just from me being there, watching the game, just not seeing him on the field as much, right? Not seeing 91 out there. So that was surprising to me. I thought individually, and by the way, in the running game too, Wise had some really nice plays where they ran a Duvernay, I think, came on a reverse or on a jet sweep, and he lost 4 yards because Wise was the outside man there and made a really nice play on it. So those are things. He had one of the sacks where he got Lamar in the open field and chased him down and brought him down. And I was very impressed by that. So those are things that you like to see. The Ravens have an explosive offense. They do. And so when you turn the ball over 3 times against them, and one of them is deep in your own end, you're going to give up points, right? And there were moments that you'd like to have back that you thought they didn't do a good enough job in stopping them. And they rushed for almost 200 yards today, and threw for almost 200 yards today. So it's hard when they're running so effectively. But some of the time, sometimes it's Lamar. Like there was one play where they pulled the guards, and Wise stood up the guard that pulled them. But then the running back is running this way, almost like a counter. The running back's going to the right, and then Lamar runs back to the left. But after Wise has already taken on the block, there's no way he can make that play. It's impossible. That guy's coming to kick him out. He's got to lower his shoulder, and then Lamar runs right around him. And it's like, how the heck can you can't possibly stop that, right? So sometimes those things are going to happen. But I thought the defense overall played pretty well today, even though they gave up 37 points.
Yeah, and it was a couple drives in a row where the Patriots just didn't have an answer, and that's what killed them defensively. And they made some key stops late. They held up. They kept the Patriots in the game and gave the offense a chance to make plays to go ahead.
Yes.
But I mean, I think Guy went out with an injury partway through, which that'll be a situation to monitor. The rushing defense was not as good after that. You don't have Raekwon McMillan. I thought Mack Wilson had a tough day, and I thought it was probably going to be a tough day for him. That's just a really hard assignment, and for the player he is too. And I thought being able to rotate Wilson and McMillan on a day like today probably helps you out.
Yeah.
And the big one, no Kyle Duggar on defense. This game is why you draft Kyle Duggar for
100%
for an offense like this, and you don't have him to match up against tight ends. Mark Andrews dominated them for a couple drives in this game.
Did.
If you have Duggar, I don't think that happens as often. And I mean, Jabril Peppers is a smaller guy than Duggar's is, and you saw that today. He just doesn't have that same force down in the box. So it's tough. I mean, you can't really blame injuries. The Ravens were down guys too. You want people to make plays, but it felt like a game for most of it. The Patriots felt like one or two players short, and you're missing one of your best players on offense, one of your best players on defense in the game. It's one of those. You feel optimistic. It was a moral victory in some ways, except for the fact that the offense shot itself in the foot, and then you have injury added to insult at the end there with Mac.
Absolutely. So. Well, John, John's in the comments saying that you can't say they played well while allowing 5 TDs and they were 5-5 in the red zone. Listen, you're not wrong about that. I just think that you see flashes from this defense of things that you like. You see guys that played well. I thought Jack Jones played pretty well today. I was happy with some of the things they did. And again, it's not a full game, but you also understand too, the offense sucked at times, right? And they played well too. I thought the offense, there were some good things to take away from the offense today, right? I thought Devontae Parker finally showed up. He again wasn't on the same page with Mac on a few of those. But I thought Mac took some chances today. I was happy to see him do that. The pass to Kendrick Bourne at the end of, was that the end of the game? Where he threw it up to Bourne and Bourne came down with it, or was it the end of the first? It might have been the end of the first half.
The first half, yeah.
Where Bourne made a nice play. So he made a nice play. The throw to Aguilar, where Aguilar ended up fumbling, was a fantastic throw. He gets it in there right in front of the defender. It's a bullet pass that Aguilar made a nice play on. You just got to hold on to the football afterwards, right? So they were good things from both sides where you look at the offense, you say, okay, there were some really nice plays in the offense and some really bad plays in the offense. You look at the defense too, and you say, hey, there was some really nice plays. Mack Wilson, you mentioned, look, I thought Mack Wilson played okay today. Not the running game, but I thought he played okay today. Overall, you saw some of that speed and athleticism with him. We're chasing down Lamar and doing some of those things. But then sometimes in the passing game, looks lost. Sometimes when they get a guard on him, the guy's toast if you got a guard on him, right? So that's so it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, you see some good things, but there's a lot of not so good things there too.
Yeah, and you look at the defense, you force a couple 3-and-outs, get an interception. You force a fumble on what I thought was a fantastic play from Jonathan Jones, who also got the pick. Jonathan Jones had a great day today.
He did.
And you had a drive. It's not a 3-and-out, but Baltimore didn't get a first down and had to settle for a field goal after one of the Mac interceptions. So the defense, I mean, it was feast or famine with the defense. You have those. You had there's only one other drive where Baltimore's moving the ball and then has to punt. And that was late in the game. Other than that, it's You have a 69-yard touchdown drive, a 75-yard touchdown drive, a 75-yard touchdown drive, a 73-yard touchdown drive, and there's a 44-yarder in there as well. It's those long ones. And
Right.
when the defense made splash plays, some of the time they were able to get off the field, and the other times they didn't make any plays to get off the field. And
Right.
part of that is, I think Lamar Jackson was the best player on the field. He's usually the best player on the field, and he made plays that we couldn't make. But it's this really weird spot where the defense played really, really well for half the game and had a really tough time for the other half. And I think you probably want one of those drives. If you can force them to settle for 2 field goals on some of those drives, and now you're looking at however many points that is off the board, from 14 down to 8 points off the board, it's a different game. And I think the same thing goes the opposite for the Patriots. Just how often they've been able to get the ball into enemy territory and they're not coming out with anything. I mean, you have that 4th down where they can't get it, which I thought was a great play from Baltimore too. They came around and defended that really well. It was kind of the reverse of what we saw last week in Pittsburgh on that 3rd down. So that was tough. You have the play with the interception in the end zone with a pass to Devontae Parker, which is really, really, that's a bad play from Mac. And from the body language on the sideline, I know you're in the stadium, so you probably missed that, but they cut to Mac on the sideline and he's screaming, "It's effing cover 4," which to me indicates he expected Devontae Parker to do something different there. I don't know. We're not in the room, so it's hard to speculate, but just it's the situational football, which is where this team is usually so good.
Yeah.
And penalties, which the penalties weren't that bad, but it was Isaiah Wynn a couple times.
It was enough. It was enough. And they, Patriots getting held all over the place. And the fact that the Ravens got called for 0 holding calls is ridiculous. They were holding all day long. All day long they were holding, which was frustrating, right? The Ravens, I think, had 2 penalties called to them, and they were both false start penalties. I mean, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. Then there was one play.
And I thought was a little bit, there were probably a couple blocks in the back there.
Yes. And then there was one play where Mark Andrews ran out for a route and was getting held the entire time, and they didn't throw a flag. And I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, it was bizarre.
I was glad that both sides. I was glad that for the most part they let them play too.
Yes,
I will take reffing like this over a game with 20 flags, and you're like,
right.
Oh, we're calling that today.
But it is difficult when when guys are trying to get off their block and they're clearly being held. And it's just like the guy's got them wrapped around. It's kind of like, well, what do you want him to do? So that's frustrating. But, it just kind of is what it is. I mean, but honestly, like what I keep coming back to, and I guess we'll talk about the Mac injury in a second, but like there were plays. Now, the Devontae Parker, the interception he threw when he was trying to throw to Devontae Parker, which, by the way, he had 2 interceptions thrown while throwing to Devontae Parker. The first one was terrible. I don't know what the hell he was looking at. It was a terrible throw anyways. I don't even know if it gets to Devontae Parker, even if that guy doesn't intercept it. It was a bad decision and a bad throw. The interception in the end zone was a terrible throw. But Devontae Parker, if you watch his route on that play, he just runs straight and never even turns around. He just ran straight into the end zone, and the guy's right on him. Clearly Mac was expecting him to go to the back of the end zone. But this is part of the problem, and this happened a little bit with Brady. Mm-hmm. In 2007 and really, then in 2009 a little bit, he would just, something wouldn't be going on and he would say, F it, Randy's there somewhere, and just throw it. And that's not, Devontae Parker's a good player. He's a good player. When he has the ability to make some plays. He had that long pass play where Mac kind of dropped it in the bucket and he caught it, which was nice. He had that really nice back shoulder, which was a nice play by him and a beautiful throw by Mac. But, he is not that guy. He's not Randy Moss. I'm sorry, he's not. And so Mac needs to stop just trying to just throw it up to him, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes this is what's so frustrating about that is because he didn't do that last year. Last year, he understood sometimes it's okay to just throw an interception, to throw an incompletion. Just throw it away. You don't have to try to throw a touchdown. Just get rid of it. Yeah, and he hasn't been doing that enough. And I don't know if that's something to do with Parker or if that's more to do with Mac, but it just drives me crazy.
Well, and there's kind of this misconception out there that what Mac Jones is he's like, I don't know, he's Kirk Cousins or he's Tyrod Taylor or like he's some check down king. And he isn't that. You go back to his Alabama tape, he's never been that. He loves to throw it deep. He loves to be a gunslinger. He doesn't always have the accuracy, but really the area in the chunk plays he's been missing is stuff over the middle of the field, the intermediate game, comebacks outside the numbers, which he did at Alabama. I don't think he's had the guys to do it in the NFL.
No.
He loves to take those deep shots. He loves to be aggressive. His issue is sometimes he doesn't know when to take that shot. And I don't have an issue with throwing it up to your guy, but you also have to look at what's going on and you have to read the defense and you have to read the situation. You're down by 5. It's 3rd down in the red zone. If you don't throw that pick there, you settle for 3 points. The defense got off the field. And they forced that fumble on the next drive. And I think it was the next drive, or that might have been the drive coming in.
It was.
Somewhere in that sequence. Either way,
yeah.
There's the play with Nelson Aguilar. And you're in a situation where if Mac doesn't throw that pick and then Aguilar doesn't fumble the ball, you are probably looking at a Patriots lead with however much time there is left in the game.
Right.
And that's where the turnovers kill you. I thought Aguilar's had a really nice start to this season. And to have 2 fumbles already, it's really tough. For a guy you're asking to be reliable, for a guy who, I mean, all these receivers are battling for playing time. Myers is the clear number 1. Parker is the clear X for now. Everybody else is battling for time. And if you want to lose time to Kendrick Bourne, the way to do that is 2 fumbles in 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
You want to lose time to Tyquan Thornton when he comes back, that's how you do it. And it stinks because I like Nelson Aguilar. I think he's been a good player this year. I think he and Mac finally have chemistry. But you just can't have those turnovers. And that's what's killing you. I see some comments from John here in the chat because the other thing, you mentioned that Devontae Parker pick, the first one, John says he's missing guys drifting into his lanes. We've seen that last year, preseason, now spot on. It's an area he just has not seen underneath defenders. He almost threw a pick at the goal line on a similar thing. Saw him do it last week and had a pick dropped.
I will say the almost pick last week and the almost pick at the goal line this week. That's not on Mac. That one, the throw to Damian Harris, which I don't know why they're getting cute down the goal line. Just freaking run it down the throat. Like you can do that, and they have the ability to do that. You have the guys, both Ramondre and Harris can get you that touchdown at the 2-yard line. There's no reason to throw it. But that throw, he's not even looking. That's catch it, throw it, it's going to be there. And Hunter Henry has his guy and then lets him go. And Patrick Queen almost takes it to the house because Hunter Henry doesn't hold his block, right? And so like that's not on Mac because that is one of those throws that this is a pick play. It's going to work. It's going to be open. He's going to walk in for a touchdown. Yep. I hated that play. I hated the 4th down call throw to Bourne behind the line of scrimmage. He running out. It just made no sense.
Well, it's and they showed the wide angle. It's supposed to be a pick play. We get a lot of man coverage. You do the pick play. Guys got momentum. We've seen that work against the Patriots for a while. I think the problem is defenses are playing it. And Marlon Humphrey made a fantastic play to see it come in and get there. But
I just hate that. I hate the thought of throwing the ball. Why are we throwing the ball on? It's 4th and 3. Why are we throwing the ball short of the 6? What are we doing? Yeah. You know, like or like at the very least, you start looking at that play and you say, okay, Bourne runs that out. When Bourne runs that out, both of those defenders are jumping up on Bourne. Right. So now the next thing you do, all right, that's in the arsenal. We saw that.
Parker's got it easy there if Mac comes off it. And the problem is that's just such a tough play to ask the quarterback to make, too, because you're throwing that. It's not like in theory, the quarterback can go through his progressions on that. But typically it's just there's one read on the play. You're throwing it to him. And unless he's covered, unless he's blanketed, you're not going to throw it. But that wasn't the case. Here was open. He caught the ball. That just wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear a crazy stat, Pat?
Let's hear it.
This is from before the game. We've talked a lot about how we've had issues with the Patriots offense.
Mm-hmm.
They are 9th. And this is before this game. They were 9th in the NFL in yards per drive. They were a top 10 offense in ability to move the ball. The problem is they're 27th in points per drive, 30th in scoring percentage, and had the 4th worst turnover percentage in the NFL.
It's brutal.
That's the story right now. And it goes back to what we said preseason. It goes back to what we were talking about at the end of last year. The offense is good enough to move the ball. They got guys who can make plays. We saw receivers winning against man coverage. We
Yep.
saw Mac making plays. The running game was playing pretty well, except for a couple penalties. The offense moved the ball and was getting into position. It's just the turnovers that kill you. And you
Yeah.
just, if the Patriots have one, and they had 4 turnovers today with that late Mac pick, I don't really care that much about that one. But if the Patriots had 1 turnover today and they didn't make some of the dumb plays, I don't know if they win, but they come off the field late in the fourth quarter with the lead.
100%. Yep.
And you know what? If that happens and Lamar goes down and beats you, Lamar goes down and beats you. That happens.
Right.
But that's what you're asking for. And I liked the heart from this team to battle back too. You give up a touchdown early and you come back and you take the lead. So this team showed a ton of heart all game. And I thought Matt Patricia called a great game. It's a bunch of little mistakes that are small in that they're only 1 or 2 plays, but huge in the amount they changed the game. And that was the case last week, and that was the case week 1. If this offense cleans up the mistakes, if it's 1 turnover per game instead of they have 8 giveaways in 3 games.
Yep.
And John throwing that in the comments. If it's 3 in 3 games, they might be 3-0 right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's the frustrating part, right? Is that this is not what they usually do. This is not the Patriots' MO. The Patriots typically don't make mistakes. And I wonder now, and I don't know, but I wonder now if they're giving Mac more and they're telling him to be aggressive and they're telling him to push the ball down the field and and that he hasn't quite figured that out in the NFL yet. Right. That last year they kind of toned it down a little bit. They said, okay, we're not really getting at, okay, we'll get after it a few times, but we're not really opening everything up for you. And this year they've opened it up and we're seeing some of those really poor decisions from him where we didn't see that stuff last year. Right. And I just wonder if it's because they're giving him more freedom and he hasn't figured out how to use that freedom yet. Right. And so, and I don't know, I don't know if that's the case or not, but I just wonder, if he has too much freedom right now and he needs to learn, hey, I can't do that. I can't just throw it up there and hope that he'll come down with it. Right. So again, I'm not sure, but I wonder if that's not what we're seeing because it's very uncharacteristic of Mac. He didn't do that at all last year. He didn't make those horrible decisions where you're like, what are you even looking at?
Well, he started doing that, I think, after the bye week. And I think that is kind of a turning point. Since the bye week last year, the only games where they haven't had multiple turnovers, the game against Jacksonville where they ran them out of the building, and that game really was not a contest, and the game against Pittsburgh last week.
Right.
Those are the only 2 that they've won in that stretch. And I think just from the eye test, it seems like they started facing tougher defenses after the bye week. It seems like teams started adjusting. I don't mean tougher as in tougher players. I mean tougher as in more complicated. I thought the Colts threw a little bit more at them out of the bye week than we would typically see from the Colts. And you saw that for the rest of the season last year. Even though I thought Mac actually played pretty well in both of the games against Buffalo. You had multiple turnovers and I think more complicated stuff. Down in Miami, you got all the exotic blitzes they were doing, which I don't think you saw to the same degree week 1. And then you see that again week 1 this year. The team couldn't handle it. And Baltimore, for all the flaws that they have as a defense this year and as rough as they've been at some points, it's a well-coached team. And they got playmakers there. It's a Harbaugh defense. And they don't have the depth that they usually do. But they got some playmakers in the secondary. They probably have the second best safety room in the NFL behind what New England has. And it's not a huge difference between the two. They make a lot of good decisions. And that's the thing. You're getting more complicated defenses, and Mac's being forced off the spot a little bit more. He's being asked to do more mentally. And teams made the adjustment and said, all right, we now, through the first however many weeks of the season last year, they realized Mac can beat us. So we're going to adjust so that Mac can't beat us or make things harder for him. And he's risen to the challenge for most of the game, but it's the killer decisions. Again, it's you're averaging, I think, more than 2 turnovers a game since the bye week last year. That's where the team's at right now. That's why they only have 2 wins in that stretch.
Yeah. And so, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Now, obviously, he goes off with an injury. Initial x-rays were negative, which is a good sign. But, it certainly could be a high ankle sprain. If it's a high ankle sprain, it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe. Like
Oh,
that's
and a high ankle sprain, you can be out for the season. You can be back in 4 weeks. And I
right.
think the real issue here is you can be back in 4 weeks, but not be the same. You're going to be playing at 80, 90% the rest of the season, which
Yeah.
for a guy, like I thought we saw some really nice throws from Mac today. Nice velocity. Plays where he could step up in the pocket and deliver a laser.
Yeah.
And we didn't see that. We talked week 1 a little bit about questioning his arm. We saw a good arm today, which I think is what we thought we would see once the line settled a little bit and there was room for him to make decisions, make plays, and step up. And if he has an ankle sprain, that's going to be a factor. If he's missing time, I don't know how confident I feel about this team with Brian Hoyer and Bailey Zappi. And if he's done for the year, oh boy, we're going to have some serious discussions about what this offseason looks like, what the rest of the season looks like. You look at the schedule ahead, the next couple of games. You go to Green Bay next week. I'm not sure if that's winnable without Mac Jones. You play
Right.
Detroit at home, a Detroit team that has looked very good on the line of scrimmage this year. I'm not sure if they can win that game without Mac Jones. At the Browns, a Browns team that, again, has looked pretty good on the line of scrimmage. I don't know if you can do that. A Bears game at home. You hope you can win that one on Monday Night Football.
Hope so. Yeah.
But, I mean, you got 2 games against the Jets, a game against the Colts. And it's all right if he's coming back in that stretch. Let's say he's out for a month or he's out 6 weeks. Well, you might be out of the playoffs by the time he comes back.
Right. Well, the good news is now 6 weeks from now. So they have as you mentioned, they have that whole schedule after the Colts game. They do have their bye after the Colts game, and then they come back with the Sunday night game, I believe, against the Jets. So
Sunday afternoon.
No, Sunday afternoon. I was looking at the Vikings. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, the Sunday night game, the Sunday afternoon game against the Jets. So you do get a bye there. So that's 7 weeks off for Mac, if that's what it is, right? If it's 6 weeks, he's 6 weeks out. He gets an extra week before he has to come back. So that's good. But it's not great. It's certainly not great, right? So technically he plays 8 weeks. He would play 8 weeks from today if he missed 6 games. But that's like you said, I'm not confident we win a game. I mean, listen, I get that Zappi's not great right now, but Hoyer stinks. He stinks. Yeah. He's not good. I mean, that game against Kansas City in 2020, if you had even remotely decent quarterback play, you win that game. And Hoyer was just god awful. And so you lose. And so I don't know. And that's 2 years ago. So I don't know if you're getting anything from Brian Hoyer. And I'm very concerned about their ability to win even a game without Mac Jones. And so, maybe they will with their defense, but man, it's frustrating.
And if we get news this week that Mac Jones is out for anything more than 4 weeks, we're looking at doing some draft podcasts a little bit earlier than we were expecting to.
Yeah.
Which is tough. I mean, and the flip side of that, the glass half full is if Mac is out and this team gets a top 10 or top 5 pick next year, all right, now you can go get the offensive weapon or the offensive lineman or the defensive weapon you want. John in the comments, hell yeah, draft pods. I don't know if I'm that enthusiastic about that, John.
Yeah, no,
not at this point. It's not even October yet. But you might be able to add some of those weapons you're hoping to add for Mac, but also I think it's pretty clear his game needs polishing. He needs time on the field to iron this stuff out.
Yeah.
And Parker is under contract next year. Myers is presumably going to be coming back. Tyquan Thornton is going to be here. And you want Mac playing with these guys, especially Parker and Thornton, to build that chemistry because they're going to be part of the picture next season.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to evaluate stuff. It's going to be so tough to figure out what to do in the offseason when you don't know what's going on with some of these players. And if it no matter which quarterback it is, if Mac is out, you're going to be seeing a lot of 8-man boxes. You might be seeing 9-man boxes. They're just going to stack it against the run and say, we don't think X quarterback can beat us deep.
Yeah.
And they're almost definitely right.
They're probably right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, well, that's, you listen to 98.5. I was listening to 98.5 on the way home, and they're talking about, you should just tank if you don't have Mac. And it's like, Bill Belichick's never going to tank. It's never going to happen, right? Because, a lot of it comes from culture, right? We don't tank here. That's not what we do, right? I do think, as much as pessimistic as I am about them winning without Mac, I will tell you they will win at least one or two of those games, even if only misses 6 games, because
Split with the Jets.
that's just what they do. That's just what
Yeah.
they do. They just Bill Belichick gives them a chance to win every single game that he coaches. He just does, right? And so I think they're going to be okay. Today, a lot of people went in today saying they got no shot, right? Now, they ended up losing by 11, but they had a ton of chances to win this game, and they just couldn't capitalize, right? So as frustrating as that is, you look at that and say, like, hey, they had a chance. They were in the game, and we kind of go from there. Now, Taylor, apparently John saying Taylor gave up the edge early, which may be why he wasn't out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. He had 3 sacks in the first half. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah. And
I'll tell you what's his name? Judon made a few nice plays, but also got burned on the edge once or twice, right? And of course, I'm getting Brian in my mentions. Oh, you don't want him to, and it's like, well, you got to set the edge. Like, I'm sorry, you got to set the edge, especially if you have pressure coming from the inside. Like, I'm just sorry, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I thought the defensive line was good for most of the game. It's just it's the second half, and it's not even the second half. It's those back-to-back 75-yard touchdown drives that I think you want to look. Those are the drives you want back if you're looking for something.
Absolutely.
And that's one. Whenever film comes out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever Game Pass decides that it's gonna be nice. I'll have to look at the front seven and see what was going on there. Because, I mean, this Baltimore offense is so hard to defend with stuff. And this was the first game where their running game got going, which, I mean, I think also part of it is they got good players on the offensive line, and they know how to execute this run game, and it's so difficult, and there's so many edges you got to worry about, and you got to play so many gaps at the same time. It's just hard to defend. And you're going to give up some big... I mean, even when the game, like we talked about last week, how the offense, like the running game, struggled in the second half, and they still got a 75-yard touchdown run from Lamar Jackson.
Right.
He can break off those plays, and it's just there's only so much you can do against that, especially when you don't have some of your better run defenders out there in Lawrence Guy and Kyle Duggar.
He's so electric, and it's so hard to defend against. I mean, it's just like they got guys running right, and then they got guys running left, and then sometimes he gives it to him, and sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes he pulls it out, and then maybe this guy's got that, and maybe Lamar's. It's like there's a million things going on at once. There was one play with Mac Wilson where like they ran a fake jet sweep behind, like orbit, not quite orbit motion, but motion behind him. He faked that handoff. Then he faked the handoff going the other way, and then he pulled it down. And Mac Wilson's like in the middle of the field, like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And then finally drops into coverage. But it's like, it's so incredibly hard to play this team because they have so many playmakers. And I thought for the most part they did okay. They didn't really allow any big plays. Justice Hill had one long run. Lamar had one or two long runs. But like for the most part, they were there. Now they just have to make, and they made, credit to them, they turned the ball over a few times, right? They ripped the ball. Jonathan Jones makes a nice, rips the ball out.
If we're not giving out a game ball today because it's a loss, but if we were giving out game balls, it's probably Jonathan Jones and on the offense, Devontae Parker. Those are going to be your game balls.
100%.
So they played well. And I mean, I think the other part of it, you saw Jelani Tavea come out for extended periods in the second half because Mac Wilson was just too small. Right. And that's the issue. They got faster at linebacker, which we all asked for, but they also got smaller. And this is the issue with the Baltimore offense. They're asking if you're too small, they're going to beat you with power, and if you're too big, they're going to beat you with speed. It's an impossible assignment there. But at the end of the day, I mean, they went for size with Tavea at some points, and I think that was probably the right call because you just needed to hit some of those bodies and make running holes smaller. But again, it's where you wish you had Duggar because he can play with that power, he can play with that strength. And also, John mentioned that they shut Bateman down. Yeah, Rashad Bateman had a pretty quiet day. Other than, I think he had two or three catches, which one of them was a bigger one. But, yeah.
He ended up with 2 for 59. So he did have one long catch, but he didn't do much, So, also, can we talk about, just for a second, it's completely off topic. I'm in a knockout pool, and I was so convinced all day that I had taken Cincinnati because I'm like, it's a must win for Cincinnati. They have to win. That's the obvious pick. That's who I'm picking. I even talked about it. My buddy was making a knockout pool pick of his own. I'm like, take Cincinnati. That's who I'm taking. Like, blah, blah. Well, this idiot on the way home, I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, oh yeah, like look at this. All these idiots picked the Chiefs. Like this is gonna be great. Blah blah. Then I'm like, wait, what? I picked the Chargers? I'm like, oh no, I didn't check it like a moron. Assumed that I picked the Bengals because that's what I thought I was gonna pick. I must have picked the Chargers like first, like on Tuesday or something like that. I must have picked the Chargers. And then not switched it. And now they're losing 38-10. I mean, game's already over. It's 5 minutes left. But like the worst part is I'm sitting in the parking lot with my buddy and I'm like, yeah, dude, like you should definitely take the Bengals. Or like I think he ended up taking whoever played the Jets today. I forget who he even was. But he's like, yeah, I'm taking it was Philly. He took Philly against Washington today. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, take the Bengals. Like that's a slam dunk pick. Like they have to win today because otherwise they'll be 0-3. And then me, the idiot, took the freaking Chargers. I'm like, what a moron, dude. Why would I take the Chargers when the Chargers look bad? And then Justin Herbert may not even have played. I don't know what I was doing. It's all on me. I should have at least checked, but I didn't. But anyways,
I haven't. I have like not checked any of my fantasy teams all day. I was so invested in this game. Can we talk for a second at least? The thing that was nice about today up until the end of the game, that was a fun football game.
It was.
That was energetic.
Yeah.
Entertaining. It felt like, I mean, this is a fun football Sunday up until you see Mac Jones limping off the field and I want to cry. Like
it just and it's tough to see because as a Patriots fan, right, we went into the season, and I think most people felt this way. You went into the season knowing you're not competing with the Chiefs.
No.
You're not competing with the Bills. You're not competing with those teams. But on any given Sunday, you can play with pretty much anyone because you have Belichick. And this year, to me, was about Mac Jones improving, getting better, and being ready for next year. So, yeah, maybe only win 9 games again. That's fine. I was fine with that. It just becomes an issue of I'm looking at it saying you need to improve everywhere. Everyone needs to get a little bit better. And, and that's what we're looking at. Now, if Mac's hurt for an extended period of time, you're not going to get that. Mac's not going to improve because he's not out there, right? And so that sucks, right? And then you look at it and say, okay, we have some young players we want to see get better. They're not on the field right now. Tyquan Thornton is hurt, right? Malcolm Jones, Marcus Jones, for whatever reason, it must have pissed in Belichick soup or something like that. He hates him for some reason. He won't put him out there. I'm not sure why, but we haven't seen him out there, right? So
you know who has at least been good is Jack Jones.
Jack Jones played well. You're right,
and I like the fire he brings. He brings energy. If you're looking to have a little bit of leadership on that defense in the post Devin McCourty era, I think having a fiery guy like Jack Jones is nice. Especially with Duggar, I think you bring a little bit of physicality and a little bit of playmaking.
Yeah,
which I don't think Mills has had a great start to this season.
He has not.
I think there's a world. It's not most likely, but there is a world where Jack Jones ends up playing over Mills at some point this year.
Well, he went in for Jonathan Jones, which I thought was surprising because I thought Jonathan Jones was playing pretty well. Obviously, he had an interception and then a forced fumble, but he came out. Jack Jones went in, which was a little surprising to me. So,
I think what they've been doing this year is they've been giving Jack Jones one series for Jonathan and then one for Mills, which I think is what they did today. I got to look at the snap counts. But interesting. Obviously, they like him a lot if they're willing to give him a couple series to replacing some of their starters. Which
he's a good player.
I think that's interesting of the defense as a whole. They've been rotating the heck out of everybody out there.
Yeah,
I think they have confidence in a lot of these guys to execute. And I think they have executed for the most part. We've seen how good this Miami offense can be now. And you look at the defensive performance they had in week 1, that looks a little bit better. Shutting down Mitch Trubisky last week. And the only guy they really had issues with was MVP Lamar Jackson. And still forced 2 turnovers in there.
Well, and that's the thing. And like we said, they had moments. Yes, they you got to be better than 37 points, but they had moments where they played well. And it was encouraging to see because you look at it and say, okay, they got players. They have guys that can do it. And so you were really worried about, do they have guys that can even do it? And now I feel pretty confident in saying that they do. And so, it's not a guarantee, but I do think that they have guys that can do it defensively. I think they have guys that can do it offensively. Mm-hmm. Man, listen, Kendrick Bourne, when he's out there, he makes plays. You talk about fire. I mean, this guy brings the fire every single time. He's pumped up. He's yelling out there. I love it. Yeah. He's still not seeing the field as much as you'd like to see. Maybe there are moments out there that he's not doing what they want him to do or whatever the case may be. But like, I just feel like you have to get him on the field more because you know, he's good. He's a good player. And the other part of it too, for me, while when you sit there and you look at, Devontae Parker today, I thought Parker took a big step forward today because there was a lot of miscommunication between him and Mac Jones in the first 2 weeks. And although that interception of the end zone was bad, and you wish that that they would have been on the same page there, ultimately that's just a terrible throw by Mac. And yeah, okay, maybe Parker should have read something and should have gotten into the corner of the end zone there, which I do think that was the case. I think that's what he wanted him to do, but it was just a really poor decision by Mac Jones. So you really can't blame that one on Parker. But to me, I look at it,
it's a little bit of both. That's one
Right.
they're talking about in the receiver room and one
Yeah.
they're talking about in the quarterback room this week.
Right.
It doesn't really matter
Agreed.
whose fault it is. You got to be on the same page.
Agreed.
Both of them
Right.
need to get there.
But they did a nice job today. He had a nice back shoulder throw, on the sideline, which was really nice. Then they had one that wasn't so good that he turned back a little bit late. He might have gotten held on a little bit, but he turned back a little bit too late. And so it's not perfect yet, but it's a lot better than it was the first 2 weeks when Parker was a non-factor, and every time Mac threw his way, it was getting picked off. Intercepted twice when he was going for Parker, but like still, it was much better today than it had been. And of course, the last throw, I don't know, I'm not sure. I guess we can go back and look at it. But I guess it really doesn't matter, but I'm not sure if that last throw was because he was getting hit and because he got hurt that throw was an errant throw over Bourne's head, or if it was something else, or whatever the case may be. But that's just kind of garbage time at that point. You're down 11 anyways. You're not coming back. So
I don't care that much about that pick in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, Devontae Parker, almost a career day today.
Yeah.
Back-to-back 100-yard performances from different receivers. I think if Mac Jones is able to go next week, I think the one big positive from this game was that if your guys are mediocre or worse on defense, and you try to play man coverage against the Patriots, they're going to make plays on you. And
Right.
Mac might throw picks, but you can't just sit in man coverage.
Right.
And if that's the case, that's an improvement from where they've been. They've had one of the highest man rates against since Mac Jones came in. And if we can keep this up even a little bit with Parker, doesn't need to be 156 yards every week like he had today.
Right.
If he can give you 70, and Aguilar can give you 70, and Bourne can give you 70, and whatever you're getting from Myers. They're not going to all give you 70 every week. There aren't enough throws to go around. But if all of them have that ability, that if they're the main guy, they're going to get you 5 catches for 70 yards. All of them can do that. And that's a step up from where we've been.
100%. I couldn't agree more. The one thing I will say, another area which continues to disappoint, and just has done it over and over again all year long, so far at least, is the tight ends, right? Yeah. And Jonnu Smith with 4 catches for 25 yards, Hunter Henry with 1 catch for 8 yards. It's just not good enough. No. It's not good enough.
Their best tight end this year might be LJ Humphrey.
Right. And that's not great because he hasn't been very good either. So that's, it's just, you have to get more out of those guys. You have to, and Hunter Henry had 1 catch and it ended up being a first down, but it's like, you got to throw to them more. You got to get them more involved. They have to be there. And so that's the one for me that's frustrating. So get them more involved. And we'll kind of see where it goes. But we do have some questions. So let's kind of let's get into these questions from Twitter, and then we'll get out of here because we've been talking for almost 45 minutes now.
Yeah, we got a couple of them here, and there's one here that's a perfect segue for us to start with. Brady Boy 12 asks, why is Hunter Henry not making more of an impact? Just from watching the film, from my perspective, I think he's looked a little bit slower than usual. I don't think he's been quite as refined of a route runner. I think we saw an issue that last week in Pittsburgh. Yeah, Hunter Henry is just. Do we think it's possible the reason we're seeing less from the tight ends is because the receivers are better and they're just getting more targets? Do you think that could be it, Pat?
Maybe, but I don't know. Last year, though, they have the same receivers they had last year, right? And Hunter Henry was one of his most valuable targets.
Well, they added Devontae Parker, which might be the difference.
Well, right, but
11. unless in
before
personality.
today,
Yeah.
right? Before today, Devontae Parker hadn't really done anything, right? So like, that's the thing for me is like, yeah, okay, the receivers are better, right? But like that still doesn't mean there's a precipitous drop off from what it was. That's a massive drop off.
Yeah. And I don't think Hunter Henry has been as good at separating this year as he was last year. I don't know the reason behind it. I can't give you an answer there. I think it's a story to watch going forward. And they've asked Jonnu Smith. We talked a little bit about Jonnu on Thursday when Taylor Kyles came on, but Jonnu just is not that polished of a route runner.
No.
So he's not, apart from like some vertical shots and some jump balls, he's not a guy you target down the field. He's a flat option, which that's what he was in Tennessee as well. Nothing's changed. If they expected him to be something different, that's on the team, not on Jonnu Smith, because this is the guy he's always been.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised they haven't tried to scheme up more things for him. To be completely honest with you, I'm surprised they haven't tried more stuff with him, because it seems like that would make a lot of sense. Is to get him, get him the ball. But
yeah, and we might see more of that in the future. But
yeah.
The next question, this is a two-parter for you. Zach Attack says, I have two questions. Number one, what's up with Mac? He's always seemed to make good decisions with the ball before this season. And number two, in short situations like the fourth down play, if they insist on throwing a screen, why not use Jonnu instead of Bourne? I feel like Jonnu would be better at those. What's your take?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. That like the decision making has gone down. I don't know why. Right? And I keep coming back. The image I have in my head is like a high school, college freshman who like never drank when he was in high school and went to college and like went crazy and like has gone way over the line and is like, oh, okay, like now I've learned my limits. I have to like figure it out. I wonder if that's what it is. Maybe it isn't, and I'm hoping that it isn't. But like it's one of those things. It's like it's really kind of unexplainable at this point why he's been so bad. And again, he hasn't been so bad. He's been pretty good at times, but he's made some really boneheaded plays that you just expect him not to make. And so that's stuff that cannot happen. That absolutely cannot happen. And if it gets cleaned up, listen, if he doesn't make those bad errors and those bad mistakes, they might be 3-0 right now, right? And you mentioned that. Like the turnovers are killing them. And of course, Aguilar had one today. But for the most part, they've come from Mac Jones, right? And I think the strip sack is on Trent Brown more so than Mac Jones, but still, every other one except for that one has come from Mac Jones, right? So that's where it's like, okay, well, we need to figure it out here, Mac. Like if you're not making those mistakes, we're winning these games. So that's something that's going to be challenging. As far as the personnel is concerned, like yeah, maybe Jonnu's good at that, but like even that Bourne fourth down play. I don't care who it's to. That's not picking up a first down, right? So like, yeah, okay, some of it, sure, I can see, but other times it's like, what are you gonna do? It was just bad execution more than anything else.
Yeah, and I'll add, we touched on it earlier, but I think Mac is seeing a higher difficulty of defense now than he was at the start of his rookie year, which is one of the reasons you're seeing more picks. Right. I know PFF last year, I think, had him 16th in turnover-worthy throws, which, I mean, at 13th, 16th most, which that's not bad. I mean, all things considered. As a rookie, and before today, I think they only graded him as having 2. So we'll have to see what it looks like. But part of this is bad luck. That throw to Devontae Parker week 1, even taking away whether or not that's a holding penalty, is not usually an interception. Right. That was an exceptional play. The Minka Fitzpatrick play, I don't know if that's always an interception. That was a great play. There's great plays from defenders mixed in here. But it's the underneath defenders. That's the only pattern that really bothers me, is he's just not always seeing guys. He's had a couple of dropped picks this year on those. That's where I want to see him clean it up. And on the Jonnu Smith bit, they actually have tried a couple screens to him this season. One worked, or one was like a throw in the flat where he picked up like 15 yards week 1. But the other ones, I think 2 other screen passes to him almost got picked off because defenses read them so quickly. So I don't, and there was another one in Miami where he did all right. He's good after the catch. I'd like to see him get the ball there more, but they have been less successful than I think you'd hope on those. And you mentioned that Bourne play. Not only, I don't think Jonnu is going to get that first. That's just a really tough situation for anybody catching that ball there. They used Jonnu on a similar play last week in Pittsburgh, and he couldn't make the catch, got broken up. Which I
Right.
don't think that was Jonnu's fault. I think that was a good defensive play and a little bit on Mac for the read.
Right.
I agree with the overall point. I don't know if in that short yardage situation, it's going to make that much of a difference. But yeah, something to monitor going forward.
I agree.
We have a question from John Limberakis, a big fan of the show, one of our favorites. He says, who of the guys you think would make that year 2 or year 3 leap has been the biggest disappointment, and who has been the biggest, positive, the most and least disappointing? He says he thinks Barmore's run defense has been banned, so that gets his bid for most disappointing. And then that Duggar looks like a future Pro Bowler, and he's probably the best of those guys. What's your read on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the best of those guys have been Ramondre. Like Ramondre's been fantastic. He's been awesome. He's been awesome. And Damian Harris has been good too. But Ramondre he's great bouncing in and out of the holes. He breaks it outside when he needs to. He runs with power. He great catching the ball to the backfield. He's been fantastic. And I think there's a pretty strong argument for him being their best all-around running back. He's even been good picking up blitzes and stuff. So like, I've been extremely happy with Ramondre this year. He's been great. Of course, Mac's been good, and Duggar I've been happy with. Yeah, Barmore is tough because he's been okay. He's been all right, but he hasn't been great. I expected him to be dominant this year. I expected him to be one of like a force of nature on the defensive line. And again, he's been meh. He's been okay, but not nearly the player that I wanted him to be. And so that I would say I'm a little bit, he could take the cake for the guy that I'm the most disappointed in, just because I thought I had such high hopes for him. And we just haven't seen quite enough. And Andy mentions Dietrich Wise, who last year started coming on. He's been fantastic this year, absolutely fantastic. And of course, that's 60-year jump, right? But he's been fantastic. And so and whatever, maybe he wasn't setting the edge, maybe he wasn't whatever, but he's been great.
Call him Dietrich Wine because he ages very well.
Look at you. Yeah. Look at you. I love it.
Oh yeah. No, he's been. I think he's just kind of gotten better every year. He's gotten just a little bit better, and I think we were a little bit slow to recognize that. But he was the wrecking ball at points today.
Yep.
But yeah, touching on the second or third year guys, I think the other guy who we didn't talk about as a disappointment is Josh Uche, who I don't think has been bad. He was a second round pick, and he's just a role player. For a guy as athletic as he is, I think this is one of those games where you'd hope he can make an impact. You're going against a guy like Lamar Jackson. Uche has never been a great run defender. He wasn't asked to do that in college. But if he were developed, if he could hit that full potential, he'd be a guy who you might be able to spy Lamar with. He has that athleticism, and he had a chance for a sack today. Couldn't finish the play. Part of that was Judon getting kind of bumped into him, which made that tough. I think he's been just fine. Barmore in the running game is the guy I'm going to focus on when I watch this tape back, because I want to see what he looked like. But for the good guys, I mean, I think the problem today, I thought all the second and third year guys for the most part were really good today, except we talk about the issues with Mac Jones, but for the most part, all those guys were good. Some of the other guys like Jalen Mills had a little bit of a rough day at points. I didn't think Devin McCourty had a great game. It wasn't bad, but he didn't look like a Pro Bowler today. I think you'd want to see him break up that pass. Miles Bryant is in his third year. I don't think he's been disappointing relative to expectations, but probably want him to make one or two more plays.
My expectations were him not playing as much as he is. So
and if you're looking for a disappointment, there's an argument for Onwenu just because he's had his issues, but he's good at winning one-on-one blocks. Right. So he's both a disappointment and exceeding expectations at the same time, depending on what role you're asking from him.
That's someone was saying, I forget who tweeted out. Might have been Barth that tweeted out this was both the offense's best game and the offense's worst game. It just, was when they were good, they were really good. And when they were bad, they were really bad. So and
that's been true of this team. And that's why I mentioned that stat about yards per drive.
Right. Isaiah Wynn's killing me. Isaiah Wynn's killing me with all the freaking penalties and the holding calls. And he had another false start, killed another drive, same exact thing that happened last week, and then Folk misses that 52-yarder instead of it being 47 as 52. So it can't happen. Cannot happen.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's to the point now where part of me is thinking, do you move Onwenu over there to right tackle and throw somebody else in at guard if you think you have a guy? I mean, is there a world where a Ferentz at guard and Onwenu at right tackle pairing is going to be more effective than what you have right now? I don't know. I'm not convinced about that. But the fact that we're in, is this year 5 for Win? And we're even asking that question. This guy is supposed to be a franchise left tackle. He hasn't been reliable enough, so they had to move him to the right side. Just really tough there.
Agreed.
You'd like more from him. So if you're looking for a year, you're looking for a year 5 disappointment, it's Isaiah Wynn, and
Sure
a year
is.
6 surprise is Dietrich Wise.
There you
To
go.
answer
Look at
your
that.
question, John.
Bam. There you go.
We have one more question.
All right, one more.
So just a fun one, if you will, to wrap things up. Oliver asked, how good is Bryce Young going to look in the Pats white uniform next year?
Oliver, I'm not even unless Bryce Young is switching to wide receiver, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. Love you, Oliver. I truly do, but that's not happening. Sorry.
Yeah, that's I don't think we're having that conversation with Mac yet.
No,
unless he comes back from this injury and looks truly awful down the stretch. I think the only way you're looking at moving on from Mac after the season is if you have a top 10 pick and it's because of the quarterback play.
Yeah. Yeah.
He looks better than Fields right now. I think the only guy he looks better than Mills. The only guy he doesn't look better than is Lawrence, and Lawrence was the number 1 overall.
Well, and not that Lawrence was the number 1 overall pick. Lawrence was a generational quarterback. Like the best. He was if he had come out after his true freshman year, he would have been the number 1 pick. So like, he's a generational guy.
Yeah.
But anyways,
yeah.
All right, listen, let's get out of here. We've been here almost an hour. My wife's like killing me because I was away all game.
I'm just gonna show this comment from John. Wife got home with Nashville hot chicken. Amazing. I've never had Nashville hot chicken. I really, really want to try it, and that sounds amazing. Good. I'm gonna tell you, with a bad loss like this, I'm gonna go get McDonald's. I need some junk food.
Do it. Also, we'll be on Thursday night this week. We'll be live Thursday night this week. We got a Packers guy coming on with us. We're going to talk about that. And I will not be doing this podcast next Sunday. Matt will, but I will not be because I will be in Green Bay enjoying the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field. I'm very excited about that. So might be watching Brian Hoyer, but I don't care. It's still going to be in Green Bay.
I was. Let me tell you, when that schedule came out, I was looking at plane tickets. I was thinking about going to Green Bay.
Yeah.
Also, I'll tell you, I was in Milwaukee this summer. You can see the brewery sign over my shoulder there. That's a Milwaukee brewery.
That's right. Yep.
So that area is fantastic. Make sure you get some cheese curds while you're out there. They are so good. The beer is fantastic.
We're going to hit it all up. We're going to hit it all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
That brewery had sausage flights.
Oh my God.
Try a whole bunch of sausages
and
toppings on them.
That sounds so good.
My goodness. I'm not even sponsored by that, but I'll just tell you, go get the. Oh, I will plug this. If we have any people with gluten intolerances who are listening to this podcast and you're looking for beer, that's Lakefront Brewery's specialty up over there. They have one called Lagosa Rita. It is a margarita-inspired beer, gluten-free. It might be a top 5 beer that I've ever had.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Come for the Patriots talk. Stay for the beer recommendations.
We might need to drink after. If Mac Jones is out for the year, we're going to be doing a lot of alcohol recommendations on this show.
Not great. Yeah, it won't be fun. But, hopefully that's not the case. We'll see what happens. So, anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. And we'll talk to you later on this week. And hopefully it'll be positive news about Mac Jones' ankle. But we'll see.
From your lips to God's ears.
Exactly. As it should be. So, all right, guys, thanks again. And we'll talk to you later on this week.